The air was thick with a strange stillness, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Sarah sat alone in the dimly lit room, the only sound the soft ticking of the old grandfather clock in the corner. The hands moved slower than they should, dragging time into a sluggish, heavy crawl. She had been in the house for 3 nights now, though it felt like weeks. Each evening, the same sense of unease crept over her. The lights dimmed on their own. The floorboards creaked under unseen footsteps. The mirrors seemed to reflect something more than just her image, something darker. Sarah tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just the stress, the isolation, the weight of the empty rooms pressing down on her. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. It had started with the whispers. They came at night just as the clock struck 3. Faint at first, like a soft breeze brushing against her ears. Then they grew, weaving through the darkness, wrapping around her thoughts. They spoke in fragments, words she couldn't fully understand. Come closer. It's waiting. Beneath the floor, beneath the skin. One night, as the whispers grew louder, she decided to confront them. She stood in the center of the room, heart racing, breath shallow, staring at the mirror. It reflected her pale face, wide eyes filled with fear. But there was something else. A figure stood just behind her, its features obscured, shadow melting into the dimness. She spun around, but the room was empty. The whispers laughed, a soft, cruel sound that echoed through the walls. Sarah tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The handle twisted under her grasp, but it felt like it was part of the wall, unmoving, solid. Panic surged in her chest, and she slammed her fists against the wood, screaming for help. But no one came. The whispers returned, closer now, as if circling her, whispering in her ear, brushing against her skin. She could feel their presence, cold and damp, like breath from a forgotten tomb. In the mirror, the figure was clearer now. Its eyes were hollow, sunken pits, its mouth a wide, gaping grin. It reached out, pressing a hand against the glass. And Sarah felt it. A cold, sharp pressure on her shoulder, as if the figure was touching her from the other side. Her breath caught, her body froze. She couldn't move. The whispers grew into a roar, filling her mind until she thought she would break. The figure leaned closer, its mouth opening as if to speak, but no sound came out. Just the endless, suffocating silence. Then the mirror cracked. It started as a hairline fracture, then spread, spiderwebbing across the surface. The glass pulsed as if alive, the cracks forming symbols, twisted runes she couldn't read but somehow understood. They spoke of hunger, of waiting, of darkness. Sarah fell to her knees, clutching her head, tears streaming down her face. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, becoming a chorus of voices, some familiar, some unknown. They called her name over and over until it wasn't her name anymore. She tried to scream, but the sound died in her throat. Her body felt heavy, her skin cold, her vision blurring as the darkness seeped in. And then, as suddenly as it began, the room fell silent. The clock ticked on, steady and unbothered, as if nothing had happened. But Sarah was gone. The mirror, cracked and dark, showed no reflection. And somewhere, far beneath the floor, the whispers continued, waiting for the next soul to join them. The days blended into each other after Sarah vanished. The house, old and forgotten, sat in eerie silence, as if it had consumed her completely. Dust settled on untouched surfaces, and the air grew colder, thicker, almost suffocating. Weeks passed, but the room where Sarah disappeared remained untouched. The mirror, now cracked and dark, seemed to pulse with a faint, rhythmic vibration, like a heartbeat echoing from deep within the walls. One stormy night, a man named Daniel, curious and unaware, found himself drawn to the abandoned house. He had heard the stories, of course, the whispers in town, the tales of those who had gone missing. But he didn't believe in such things, not until he crossed the threshold. The moment Daniel stepped inside, the air changed. It smelled of damp earth and decay, and the floorboards groaned under his feet as if protesting his presence. He made his way to the room, flashlight trembling in his hand. The mirror, half shattered, reflected his pale face. And something else. A faint outline, barely visible, moved behind him in the reflection. Daniel spun around, heart hammering, but saw nothing, only the darkness. The whispers began, soft at first, curling through the air like smoke, then louder, insistent, wrapping around his mind. They spoke in broken phrases. "She's waiting, under the floor. The mirror sees all." He stumbled back, feeling the temperature drop. The floor beneath him pulsed, and for a brief moment, it was a cold, rainy night when Emma decided to explore the abandoned house at the end of Maple Street. The house had stood empty for decades, its windows boarded up, and its reputation wrapped in mystery. People in town whispered stories about the place, how those who entered felt eyes watching them, heard voices calling their names, and sometimes never returned at all. Emma, a young woman with a taste for adventure, had always been skeptical. She wanted to prove the legends were just stories made up to scare children. Armed with only a flashlight and her determination, she stepped onto the soggy porch. The wood creaked beneath her boots as she pushed the heavy door open. A stale, musty smell filled her nostrils. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Wallpaper hung in tatters, and broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. Her flashlight flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Suddenly, she heard a faint whisper coming from the hallway behind her. "Emma," it called softly, almost like a sigh carried on the wind. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to move forward. She told herself it was just the wind, or her imagination playing tricks. Step by step, she walked deeper into the house, the whisper growing louder, more urgent. In one room, she found old photographs, their faces faded and eyes scratched out. On a dusty table lay a cracked music box. Curious, Emma wound it up. A haunting melody began to play, filling the room with an eerie tune. The whispers stopped suddenly, replaced by silence. Then a cold breath brushed her neck, and she spun around. Nothing was there, but the shadows seemed to dance with a life of their own. She felt eyes on her, unseen but relentless. Emma's curiosity turned to fear as she noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of the hall. The whispers now formed words, pleading and warning all at once. "Don't stay. Leave before it's too late." She hesitated, then pushed the door open. Inside was an old bedroom, the air heavy with sorrow. On the cracked mirror hung a message written in the fogged glass. "Help me." Suddenly, her reflection twisted into a horrifying visage, eyes black and hollow. Emma stumbled back, her scream echoing through the house. The whispers rose to a deafening chorus, demanding she leave. Panicked, she bolted toward the front door, but it slammed shut before she could escape. The house seemed to breathe around her, walls closing in, shadows reaching out. Minutes passed like hours until, exhausted and terrified, Emma collapsed on the floor. The whispers softened, becoming a single voice, gentle but chilling. "You cannot leave, not yet." At dawn, the townspeople found Emma on the doorstep, pale and shaking. She never spoke of what happened inside, but from that day the house stood silent, except for the faintest whisper carried on the wind, warning anyone who dared listen. Some secrets are better left buried.
The night was unnaturally cold, the air thick with fog that clung to the trees like a suffocating shroud. I had always thought the woods behind my house were quiet, peaceful even. But that night, they felt different, alive, watching. I was alone, walking home from a late shift, my flashlight flickering in my hand. The beam barely cut through the mist, casting long shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. A sharp crack echoed through the silence, a branch snapping underfoot, but it wasn't me. I stopped, heart hammering in my chest. My breath came in shallow gasps, clouding in the cold air. I shone the light into the trees, but saw nothing. Still, I felt it, a presence, just beyond the edge of the light, waiting. I told myself it was my imagination, but the footsteps started again, slow, measured, matching mine. I picked up my pace, but the steps grew louder, closer. Then the smell hit me, a sharp metallic tang, like rust and decay. My skin crawled. I tried to call out, but my voice was swallowed by the fog. That's when I saw it, a figure, pale and thin, standing between the trees. Its face was wrong, too smooth, too still. No eyes, just dark hollows that seemed to pull me in. I froze, my body refusing to move as it raised an arm, pointing at me. A low whisper filled the air, like 1,000 voices speaking at once, saying the same thing over and over. Come closer. The fog thickened, wrapping around me like cold fingers. My light flickered again, then died completely, plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me, and I stumbled back, tripping over a root, falling hard onto the damp earth. The whispers grew louder, closer, as if they were inside my head. My hands scrambled for the flashlight, but it was gone. I could feel something cold brushing against my skin, like fingers tracing my arms. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out everything. I tried to crawl, to get away, but the ground seemed to hold me, pulling me down. And then, silence. The fog parted, just enough for me to see. The figure was gone. I lay there, heart racing, tears streaming down my face. I thought it was over, that I was safe. But then I heard it, soft, right behind me. A voice, no louder than a breath. I froze, unable to breathe, the whisper curling around me like a fog wrapping tighter and tighter. My body felt paralyzed, every muscle locked in place. My eyes darted left and right, but the darkness swallowed everything whole. And then, a slow, deliberate creak echoed above me. My head tilted back, barely able to move, and there, hanging from the branches, was a figure, swaying gently as if the wind was cradling it. But there was no wind. The fog was still, heavy, unmoving. The figure's face was clearer now. Hollow eyes, a wide, unnatural smile carved across its pale skin. Its mouth opened, but no sound came out. It simply stared. No, it felt like it was inside my mind, whispering directly into my skull. Words that didn't make sense, fragments of broken thoughts, names, places, numbers I didn't recognize. I tried to close my eyes, to block it out, but the images only grew stronger. Flashes of things I couldn't explain. A woman screaming in a dark room, a child's laughter turning into sobs, a man standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the void. The voices urged me to stand, to move closer, but my legs were still frozen. Suddenly the fog shifted. I could hear my own heartbeat again, loud and ragged in my ears. A shape moved in front of me, closer now, its face inches from mine. I could see the texture of its skin, cracked like old porcelain, its breath cold and heavy against my cheek. It whispered one word, clear, sharp, like a blade slicing into my brain. Run! Without thinking, I scrambled to my feet, my legs burning with the effort. I ran blindly into the fog, branches tearing at my clothes, roots snagging my ankles. I didn't care. I had to get away. The whispers followed, growing louder, shifting into laughter, low, guttural, inhuman. I felt the weight of something chasing me, almost brushing my back. I burst from the trees, gasping for air, collapsing onto the cold, damp ground outside the woods. The fog seemed to stop at the tree line like an invisible wall holding it back. I dared to glance back and saw nothing. No figure, no fog, just the still, silent woods. But I knew it wasn't over. It never would be.
It was a cold, rainy night when Alex decided to take the shortcut through the old woods. The trees loomed like shadows, their branches clawing at the sky. The path was narrow, barely visible in the dim light of the full moon. His footsteps echoed on the wet ground, each step sounding louder than the last, as if the forest itself was listening. Suddenly, a strange sensation crept over him. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic, like rust or old blood. He stopped, glancing around. That's when he saw it, an old, abandoned house half hidden in the trees. The windows were shattered, the door barely hanging from its hinges. A flickering light came from inside. Curiosity pulled him closer. Maybe it was a lost camper or someone needing help. But as he approached, the temperature dropped. His breath came out in white clouds, and a low, almost imperceptible hum filled the air. He stepped onto the porch, the wood creaking under his weight. Inside, the house smelled of decay. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, and the floorboards groaned with each step. In the center of the room, a dusty table stood, surrounded by mismatched chairs. On the table was a candle, flickering as if disturbed by an unseen hand. Alex felt the hair on his arms stand on end. The hum grew louder. Then, from the corner of the room, a figure emerged, slowly, silently. It was tall, unnaturally so, its face hidden in shadow. As it stepped into the candlelight, Alex's breath caught in his throat. The face, it was his own, identical in every way except for the eyes, deep, empty pits where darkness seemed to swirl. The figure raised a hand, pointing at him, and whispered in a voice that was both his and not his. "You shouldn't be here." The lights flickered, and suddenly the walls seemed to pulse, breathing in and out like a living thing. Shadows shifted, stretching toward him. The hum became a deafening roar. He stumbled back, tripping over a loose floorboard, and fell to the ground. When he looked up, the figure was gone, but the whispers remained, echoing in his mind, repeating that same phrase over and over. "You shouldn't be here." Alex ran, not stopping until he was far from the house, his heart racing, his breath ragged. But as he reached the edge of the woods, he realized something terrifying. The whispers hadn't stopped. They were inside him now, coiled in his thoughts, waiting. And when he looked down at his reflection in a puddle, the face staring back wasn't entirely his own. Written for an eerie, suspenseful storytelling tone, I wasn't supposed to be at the hotel that night. My reservation was canceled last minute at another place, and the only room left in the city, thanks to a storm that shut down half the roads, was at a rundown inn called Grey Pines. The man at the front desk barely looked up as he slid me the key, with the number 313 scratched into the rusty brass tag. Room 313 was at the end of a dim hallway, past flickering lights and wallpaper that peeled like sunburned skin. The room itself was freezing, despite the radiator's faint clanking. It smelled of damp wood and something metallic, like dried blood. There was only one thing in the room that stood out: a tall, antique mirror bolted to the wall facing the bed. The glass was warped, old. Its wooden frame had carvings that resembled twisted vines or veins. I don't remember falling asleep, but around 2:40 a.m., I woke to the sound of breathing. Not my own, heavy, labored, coming from the direction of the mirror. I sat up. The room was pitch dark. My phone, which I'd left on the nightstand, was off, dead, though I had charged it. I looked at the mirror. At first, nothing. Then something moved. I blinked, leaned forward. My reflection was still in bed, lying motionless. I wasn't in the reflection. I scrambled out of bed and flicked on the lamp. My reflection was back. Everything was normal again. I laughed a little, nervously. Sleep paralysis, maybe. or a bad dream. Just stress. I went to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. When I looked up into the bathroom mirror, my reflection smiled back at me, but I wasn't smiling. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I asked the receptionist if someone had reported weird things about room 313. He stiffened slightly, then said, "That room was closed. It shouldn't have been available." He wouldn't say anything more, just handed me a coffee on the house and practically begged me not to leave a review online. Back at home, things got stranger. Mirrors around my apartment started behaving wrong. Delayed reflections. Shadows moving behind me that weren't there when I turned around. I covered every mirror, every reflective surface. I even stopped using my phone's front camera. But 2 nights ago, I forgot to cover the hallway mirror, just for a second. And that's when I saw him again, the reflection of me, but not me, standing still, smiling wide, his eyes completely black. I turned. Nothing there, but on the mirror, clear as day, a handprint was pressed on the inside of the glass. Since then, I've started hearing whispers, sometimes from behind the mirror, sometimes right behind my ear when I know I'm alone. And now something new is happening. Last night, I saw a door in the mirror, a door that doesn't exist in my apartment, a door that slowly began to open. There was a pull inside me. I needed to know what was behind that door, but every instinct, every cell in my body screamed, "Don't look." Still, my eyes wouldn't move. The door creaked open wider, and a thick black mist began to spill into the room. It slowly fogged the surface of the mirror, revealing a single chilling message written in the condensation. "You let him in." What did that mean? Me? I did this? Suddenly, the actual door to my bedroom creaked. I spun around. Nothing, but wet footprints trailed across the floor, small, barefoot, inhuman. I turned back to the mirror and my reflection was gone. In its place, he stood. Those soulless black eyes were closer now, pressed against the glass, fogging it with each breath. Then a crack, a sharp fracture split across the mirror, and a whisper followed. "You belong here now." The glass shattered. Shards hit the floor like falling teeth. But behind the mirror, something emerged. At first, it was just a shadow. Then it formed a shape, human-sized, faceless, just eyes, endless black eyes. I tried to run, but my legs felt like stone. That voice, once a whisper, was now deafening in my skull. "He took your reflection. Now he takes your place." I woke up in my bed, like nothing had happened. But when I looked into the mirror, I still wasn't there. My reflection was gone, and last night someone called me. I answered. It was my own voice. "Why are you in my world?" I never believed silence could be loud until that night. It was supposed to be a normal evening, just me, my couch, and a late-night movie. But somewhere between the second and third act, something felt wrong. Not like something I could see or hear, just feel. The kind of wrong that makes your skin crawl and your heartbeat echo in your ears. I heard a knock, not on the door, but inside, like a faint tap from within the walls. I muted the TV, leaned forward, and held my breath. Nothing. But I knew I heard it. So I stood, slowly, each step creaking as I approached the hallway. Lights off, door locked, windows sealed. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. I walked past the mirror hanging near the entrance and paused. There was something behind me in the reflection. A shadow, not shaped like mine, taller, still. I spun around, no one. I looked back at the mirror, nothing. I smiled nervously, told myself I was tired, but as I turned off the hallway light, I heard breathing behind me, short, fast, as if something was trying not to be heard. I turned again. Nothing, but the air was heavier, colder. My hands started to shake. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera, pointing it toward the hallway. Still nothing. But the moment I switched to selfie mode, there it was. A face, right behind mine. Pale, eyes wide, mouth open, but silent. I screamed and threw the phone. It slid across the floor and stopped at the couch. I didn't move. I just stood there, listening. And that's when the whisper came, right in my ear. "I know you see me." I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the light, and sat in the tub. The mirror above the sink started fogging up, and slowly words formed on the glass. "You let me in." I closed my eyes and prayed. I don't even remember falling asleep, but when I woke up, it was morning. Everything was normal, but my phone screen was cracked, and in the camera roll, one new video had been saved. 3:12 a.m., a 6-second clip, me, sleeping in the tub, and behind me, something crawling over the edge, watching. If you made it this far, you're not alone anymore. Something follows the ones who know, so listen closely. And if you ever hear breathing when no one's there, run. I didn't leave my apartment the next day. I couldn't. Something felt unfinished. Like a book you thought you closed, only to find another chapter written in your own handwriting. I rewatched the video again and again. That thing crawling behind me wasn't human. Its limbs bent the wrong way. Its head tilted like it was listening to something beneath the floor. But the worst part, the way it paused, like it knew I'd watch later, like it posed for me. By the third replay, I noticed something new. A whisper in the audio, slowed down, reversed, and hidden deep under the static. I cleaned the sound up, reversed it, and played it back. Just 5 words. "The door is still open." My heart dropped. I checked the front door again, still locked. But they didn't mean that door. No, it was the mirror, the one in the hallway. I covered it with a sheet that night, and I slept with all the lights on. At 3:12 a.m. sharp, the lights cut off. Every single one. My phone, fully charged, powered down. I sat up in bed, frozen. My ears rang with silence, until I heard the knock again. This time, not from the wall, from inside my room. 3 slow knocks from my closet. I held my breath. "Go away," I whispered, but the door creaked open on its own. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. A voice came from the dark. "You watched me. Now I watch you." Then the mirror sheet in the hallway fell. I didn't touch it. There was no wind, nothing natural, but in its place, written on the glass with what looked like black ash, was a new message. "One of us now." I'm not sure what that means. I haven't left the apartment. My reflection doesn't always match me anymore. Sometimes it moves when I don't, smiles when I cry. If you're hearing this, there's still time. But don't look into mirrors at 3:12. Don't sleep with your closet door open. And for the love of whatever's left, don't watch the video again. In the dead of night, Emma heard a faint whisper behind her. She turned, but the hallway was empty. The whispers grew louder, echoing from the walls. Suddenly, the old mirror in her room cracked, revealing a shadowy figure staring back at her. It smiled, but its eyes were hollow voids. Emma tried to scream, but no sound escaped. The figure stepped out of the mirror, its cold breath freezing her skin. "You invited me," it hissed. "Now you belong to the shadows." Her world faded to black as the whispers consumed her soul. Emma's breath caught in her throat as the shadow closed in. The house around her seemed to twist, walls bleeding darkness. She tried to scream, but silence swallowed her voice. Cold fingers grazed her skin, pulling her toward the mirror's cracked surface. "You can never leave," it whispered. Her reflection grinned, eyes empty and endless. The night had claimed her, forever lost between reality and shadow. The darkness inside Emma's house was no longer just a feeling. It had taken shape, a cold presence that clung to her like a second skin. Each morning, waking up was like pulling herself from a nightmare she could never fully escape. Her reflection in the cracked mirror no longer matched her movements perfectly. Sometimes it lagged, other times it moved on its own, smirking with those hollow, endless eyes. She stopped answering her phone. Friends' voices turned distant echoes in her mind, reminders of a world she was losing faster than she wanted to admit. One night, the whispers weren't just whispers anymore. They formed words, low and sibilant, crawling under her skin like icy spiders. "Come to me. Come to me." Emma tried to resist, but the basement door creaked open again, inviting her into its depths. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter now, ancient, unreadable runes that pulsed with a heartbeat of darkness. As she descended, her heartbeat thundered, but it wasn't just fear. It was something else, an unshakable pull from the shadows themselves. At the bottom, the black mirror shard rested on the pedestal, humming louder than before, vibrating with malevolent life. Her fingers brushed the shard's surface, and a shock of cold ran up her arm, freezing her blood. Suddenly, the shadow appeared, solid and terrible, a nightmare given flesh. It reached out, touching her forehead with a whisper of smoke. "You belong to me," it hissed. Emma's vision blurred, her body stiffened, and for a moment she felt her soul fray like a worn thread. But then, a spark of defiance flared inside her chest. She pulled away, staggering backward, clutching the shard tightly. With trembling hands, she smashed the shard on the floor. Glass exploded, scattering light in jagged shards, but the shadow's laughter filled the basement, echoing like a curse. Breaking the prison only frees the prisoner. And the curse. Emma fled upstairs, the house groaning around her as if waking from a long sleep. Doors slammed, windows rattled, and in every reflective surface, the shadow's grin awaited her. She wasn't just trapped, she was hunted. Emma barely remembered how she got back to her bedroom. The house felt alive, whispering secrets in a language older than time. Every reflection in the cracked mirror's shards showed fragments of her soul unraveling, a twisted version of herself trapped behind glass, waiting. Sleep was a distant memory. Instead, she drifted in a half-life between waking and nightmares, where the shadow stalked her relentlessly. It wasn't just in the house anymore. She caught glimpses of it in dark windows, water reflections, even her phone screen. The grin, the hollow eyes, always watching. One morning, Emma woke to find a message scrawled on her bedroom mirror in condensation. "You're next." Her heart slammed against her ribs. She wiped it away, but the words reappeared, dripping like blood. Desperation drove her back to the basement. She needed answers, a way to break free. The basement was colder than before, the runes pulsing like a heartbeat, alive and hungry. Emma's fingers brushed the walls, tracing the symbols that seemed to writhe beneath her touch. A voice echoed, soft and cold, "Find the origin, or become the shadow." Emma's breath hitched. Somewhere in this house was a secret, a curse bound to the mirror, to the shadow, to her fate. Determined, she searched the basement's darkest corners until her fingers found a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay a dusty journal, its pages yellowed with age. She flipped through the fragile sheets, reading about a man who once lived here, a mirror maker obsessed with capturing souls. His final entry was a warning. "The mirror is a prison, but also a gateway. Once opened, the shadow feeds on the living. Only the broken can save themselves." Emma's skin crawled. She was both prisoner and prey. Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut. The shadow was near, its cold breath on her neck. Choose, it whispered, become one with me, or be consumed. With trembling hands, Emma grabbed the journal and the largest mirror shard she could find. She braced herself for the fight of her life, a battle for her soul in the haunted heart of the house. Emma gripped the shard tighter, heart pounding. The shadows surged forward, a black wave of cold and despair. But as it touched the glass, the shard pulsed with a blinding light. The darkness screamed, twisting, shrinking, until it shattered into nothing. Breathing hard, Emma stared at her reflection. For the first time in weeks, she saw herself clearly. No hollow eyes, no cruel grin. Just her. Yet, as the first light of dawn crept through the window, a faint whisper lingered in the air. "This isn't over." Emma swallowed hard, knowing some darkness hides forever. Waiting. Finished. Mark had always prided himself on being practical. No ghost stories, no superstitions, just facts and logic. So when he moved into the old apartment building downtown, he expected nothing but a quiet, uneventful life. But then he found the door. It was hidden behind a loose panel in the hallway, so well camouflaged that he almost missed it. The door was ancient, its wood cracked and faded. No key fit the lock, but after some fiddling, Mark managed to pick it open. Inside was a small, empty room, except for a single porcelain doll sitting on a dusty shelf. Its glassy eyes seemed to watch him, cold and unblinking. He smiled, thinking it was a forgotten child's toy. But as he turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind him. Mark's heart pounded as the room grew icy cold. The doll's head slowly turned, its painted smile stretching unnaturally wide. A voice, barely a whisper, echoed through the room. "Welcome home, Mark. We've been waiting." Days passed, but Mark never left that room. His friends knocked, but no answer came. The apartment outside was silent, untouched. Inside, Mark faced his reflection in the doll's eyes, trapped in a nightmare where time bent and reality twisted. Each night, the doll's smile grew wider, and Mark's hope grew thinner, until he wasn't sure which was the prisoner and which the jailer. Mark's breaths became shallow, his skin clammy. The room's cold seeped into his bones, refusing to relent. Every attempt to open the door ended in failure. The lock mocked him with its stubborn silence. He pounded, screamed, begged, but the walls only echoed his despair. At night, the doll's eyes glimmered with a sinister light. Its smile grew wider, twisting into a grotesque grin. Mark could hear whispers, soft, coaxing voices curling around his mind like tendrils of smoke. They promised freedom, but at a cost. Memories began to blur. Faces of people he loved faded into shadows. His own reflection in the doll's glassy eyes seemed less human, more like a hollow shell. One evening, as a storm raged outside, Mark felt the floor beneath him shift. The walls seemed to breathe, closing in tighter. The doll's voice, now clear and mocking, hissed, "Stay with us, Mark. Forever." In that moment, Mark realized the truth. The room was a prison, not just for him, but for countless souls trapped by the doll's curse. The porcelain guardian fed on fear, binding the living into eternal captivity. Desperation surged. With trembling hands, Mark grabbed a shard from the cracked doll's base, hoping to break the curse. But the moment the shard touched his skin, a cold fire erupted, burning yet numbing. The doll's grin deepened. "You belong to me now." Darkness swallowed Mark whole. The door behind him creaked open, revealing an empty hallway. Outside, life continued unaware, but inside the forgotten room, the doll's eyes blinked slowly, waiting for its next guest. Days melted into one another, but inside the forgotten room, time had no meaning. Mark's mind frayed, memories slipping through his fingers like mist. He was trapped in a loop of shadows and whispers, his will slowly eroding. Yet, A faint spark of defiance remained. One night, as the doll's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement, Mark forced himself to speak. "Why me? Why this room?" The doll's smile twisted into something almost human. "Because you looked. Because you opened the door." Mark realized then the truth. Curiosity was the key to the prison. The moment he found the hidden door, the curse claimed him. But the doll whispered secrets too, ancient and dark, about a way out. A ritual buried deep in the building's forgotten history, one that demanded sacrifice and courage. Armed with this fragile hope, Mark prepared. The doll watched, its grin never fading. When dawn came, Mark knew escape meant facing the darkness head-on, facing the forgotten souls trapped before him, and the shadow that fed on them all. Mark stood in the center of the room, clutching the brittle pages of an ancient ritual promising escape. The porcelain doll watched silently, its glass eyes gleaming. As Mark chanted, shadows twisted into faces of those trapped before him, their silent screams filling the air. The doll hissed, "You cannot leave, Mark. You are ours now." But Mark continued, his voice steady. Suddenly, a blinding light shattered the darkness. The faces dissolved, whispers fading. The door creaked open. Mark gasped fresh air, free at last. Yet in the shadows, a faint whisper lingered. "We will wait for the next." I moved into the cabin to escape noise, people, life. The agent said it was old but sturdy, quiet, perfect for writing. First night I heard it, a faint scraping beneath the wooden floor. I thought it was rats. I shrugged it off. Second night, the scraping turned into tapping. Sharp, rhythmic, like fingernails. I stomped the floor, shouted, even banged with a broom. It stopped, until 3:11 a.m. Every night. Same time, same pattern. Tap, tap, tap. Silence. Then it started whispering. Not words, just the sound of someone trying to speak through earth. I ripped up a floorboard. Just dirt. But it was warm. Breathing. The air down there moved like lungs. I called the agent. No answer. I searched online. Nothing about this cabin's past. But someone had left a review 4 years ago. One word. Run. Next night, the floorboards were sealed again. Nailed shut. I didn't do that. I stared at them for hours, not daring to blink. The clock hit 3:11. The floor creaked open by itself. No wind, no draft. Just deliberate, loud cracking of old nails giving up. Something rose through the gap. Pale skin, hair like drowned moss. Its face was stitched, as if trying to keep something inside. I couldn't scream. It looked at me, without eyes, and whispered in a voice I felt in my bones. "I remember your voice." I had never been here before. I had never spoken to anything like this. And yet it knew me. Or something I had once been. I ran outside into the woods, phone shaking in my hand. No signal. When I turned back, the cabin was gone. Just dirt, freshly dug, waiting. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The forest didn't look the same anymore. The trees leaned inward as if they'd been listening. Their bark was split, bleeding a thick black resin that pulsed like veins. I walked for hours, or maybe minutes. Time stretched thin like damp paper. When I finally reached the main road, headlights blinded me. A car screeched to a halt. The driver asked if I was okay. I nodded, though I wasn't. My lips moved without meaning to. "It's not done with me," I heard myself say. His face dropped. He whispered, "You opened it, didn't you?" Before I could answer, his eyes rolled back, and he began convulsing. I stepped back, horrified, as his mouth stretched impossibly wide, tearing at the corners. From his throat came that same whisper I heard beneath the floor. "The soil remembers." I ran. No direction, no thought, just away. But everywhere I went, there were signs, symbols carved into tree trunks, into road signs, even into my own arms. I don't remember doing it, but the lines were fresh and deep. At a gas station miles away, I saw the newspaper. Man missing after buying isolated cabin. Only remains found, teeth, and a tape recorder. The photo. It was me, same clothes, same scar on my cheek. I never owned a recorder. I turned to leave. The gas station door wouldn't open. The lights flickered. A voice whispered over the radio. "Play it back. Start again." And suddenly I could hear tapping, coming from inside the walls, getting closer. The lights snapped off. The radio hissed. I was alone in pitch black, save for the red glow of the open sign behind the counter. Then the tape recorder appeared. I swear it wasn't there before. Dusty, old. My name etched into the side. My hands moved without my will, pressing play. A static-filled voice crackled to life. My voice. I warned you. I tried to bury it, but it wanted out. Then screaming. Mine. Followed by laughter. Not mine. Something older. Something hungry. The gas station windows shattered inward. Wind howled through, carrying the scent of earth, rot, and something like burned teeth. Shelves toppled, cans rolled across the tile. From the bathroom door, something slithered out. Too long, too thin, a grin stretching from cheek to cheek. You finished what I couldn't. I ran again, but the highway was gone. The world was now endless trees and that same whisper in every branch. Now I'm writing this. If you found it, if you're reading, don't press play, don't answer the knocks, and never ever go beneath the floorboards, because it followed me, and now it's at your door. In the heart of a forgotten village where the mist never lifted and the moon seemed to hide behind dark clouds, stood an old mansion. Locals spoke in hushed tones about the place, warning outsiders to never enter once night fell. They said the walls whispered secrets, and shadows moved with a life of their own. Evelyn had always been drawn to the strange and mysterious. When she inherited the mansion from a distant relative she barely knew, curiosity outweighed fear. The villagers' warnings felt like nothing more than superstition. On the first night she stepped inside, the door creaking like a scream in the silence. The air was thick with dust and something else, an unease that settled deep in her bones. As she explored, faint whispers brushed past her ears, unintelligible but chilling. She told herself it was the wind, the old house settling. But then the shadows flickered, dancing just beyond the reach of her flashlight. Hours passed and the whispers grew louder, more urgent. They spoke of pain, betrayal, and something darker, a presence trapped between walls, waiting. Evelyn found herself drawn to the basement door, a place she had avoided all evening. The whispers seemed to come from there, pulling her closer. With trembling hands, she opened the door. The darkness inside was absolute, swallowing her flashlight's beam. Stepping down, the air grew colder, and the whispers turned into voices, urgent, desperate, pleading. Suddenly, a cold hand grabbed her ankle, icy fingers tightening like chains. Evelyn screamed, dropping the flashlight, the beam rolling and catching a pair of glowing eyes staring at her from the blackness. Her heart pounded as the shadows around her began to move, twisting into shapes that no human should see. She ran blindly, the voices chasing her, echoing promises of eternal darkness. Reaching the basement stairs, she slammed the door shut, but the whispers did not stop. They seeped through the cracks, filling the mansion with a suffocating dread. Evelyn knew then that the house was not just old. It was alive, hungry for something she could not yet understand. And it was only the beginning. Evelyn's breaths came in ragged gasps as she pressed her back against the basement door, heart pounding like a drum of doom. The whispers hadn't stopped, they had multiplied, swirling around her like a suffocating fog. But now, within those voices, she began to catch words, sharp and venomous. Join us. Forever. No escape. Her skin crawled. She fumbled for the flashlight, but it was dead, black as the void below. Panic clawed at her throat as the shadows inside the walls thickened, pulsating like living things. She wasn't alone. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, gaunt, with hollow eyes that gleamed like coals. It smiled, a twisted, cruel grin that promised torment. Evelyn stumbled backward, but the stairs behind her seemed to stretch endlessly into the abyss. "You shouldn't have come," the figure whispered, voice like nails scraping on stone. "Now, you belong to us." Desperate, Evelyn scrambled up the stairs, hands scrabbling at the peeling paint and rotting wood. The house groaned around her, walls bending and breathing, trapping her in a nightmare that refused to end. She burst into the main hall, gasping for air. The whispers followed, louder, angrier. Mirrors shattered, and the lights flickered as shadows writhed across the ceiling like serpents. The house was alive, and it was hunting her. Suddenly, a cold breath grazed her neck. She spun around, but no one was there. The whispers turned into laughter, dark, mocking, endless. Evelyn realized the truth. The mansion didn't just want her to stay. It wanted to consume her, to add her soul to the chorus of whispers trapped within its cursed walls. Her only hope was to find the source of the darkness. Somewhere in the house, buried beneath centuries of secrets, lay the key to escape, or to be lost forever. But time was running out. The shadows were closing in. Evelyn's hands trembled as she crept down the endless hallway. Whispers clawed at her mind, growing louder, more desperate. Suddenly, a cold gust swept through a cracked door, revealing a flickering candle. Inside, she found an old diary, its pages yellowed and brittle. One sentence stood out clearly. "Do not free me, or join the curse of eternal night." That's all for our video, friends. If you want more videos like this, please specify them in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Have a nice day.